Hello, I'm Joe Langton with Automating Success Show. I today have the pleasure of interviewing Helen Grainer. She is the current CEO of Turtle, and it is a awesome robot weeding machine. We'll get more into that in a minute, but I have to tell you, I'm just going to introduce some of your other accomplishments because I think they're amazing. So, Helen has revolutionized the cleaning industry with the introduction and the sale of millions of Roomba vacuums. Everybody knows the Roomba, and honestly, as someone into robotic mowing, I always have to explain to people that it's not a Roomba, it's a robotic lawnmower. So that just goes to show how how much of an impact that you've had on.
Just add high-speed spinning blades.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. Delivered some of the first robots in combat to remediate IEDs. Created stuff for the U.S. Army, saved hundreds of and thousands of lives. Demonstrated a cocoon-delivered behavior-controlled robot to the government that resulted in the initiation of the Mars rover program, which I think is absolutely amazing. Explored the Great Pyramids, which hopefully we can talk about that a little bit because I'm totally amazed by that. And I love the fact that there was no treasure found, but hey, you got to explore, right? So worked for JPL, NASA, and the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. Founded Sci-Fi Works, a drone company that delivered persistent drones flying for many hours, days, and weeks automatically. They're deployed in Iraq and Syria. Let's see. And I think this is awesome, just knowing that you've been wanting to create robots since you were 11 years old. And what inspired you was R2-D2 in Star Wars. So this is a quick introduction on this amazing woman. Helen, what would you like to add to that at this point in your life?
I would just say, yes, it's all true. I'm a robot geek.
Well, most of the people that are tuning into this are either business geeks or robot geeks. So the good news is you're going to help the business people that tune in, and the robot geeks are going to relate totally with you. And I'm one of both. I love business and I also love robotics. So I always like to dive in, here on the show. We already kind of started with it with you, 11 years old, you go and see Star Wars and you become, as in your own words, a robot geek. So, looking at your childhood, I obviously know during the research you were born in London, but kind of dissect that a little bit, kind of tell us where you started and kind of what you think got you to where you are as the woman in front of you.
Well, I fell in love with R2-D2 when I was 11. I saw him on the big screen, 77. And, he had a personality. He was a character, a personality. He was more than a machine. And ever since then, I wanted to build things that are more than machines. And I'm not saying we have R2-D2 yet. We haven't saved the universe. But with the PackBot, the military robots disposing of IEDs, one time a Marine brings one of these robots into the robot hospital in Iraq, and he's like, "Can you fix it? Because it's in pieces." And it turns out that he didn't want it just replaced. He wanted this one because he had hash marks on the back of its head, his disconnected head, that had how many missions he'd been on. It was like 17 IED missions, one vehicle-borne mission. And they named it Scooby-Doo, and they thought about it as one of their teammates, right? And they really wanted it back. Now, we just said it voids the warranty, but I think it's an example of people getting attached to them. And with, the cute, if I may say so, bleeps and bloops that the Roomba has, people buy it absolutely as an appliance. They take it home, and the only thing they've had experience with that acts like that is a pet, and they start naming them. In fact, one Georgia Tech survey found that 66% of the Roomba users named their Roomba.
Well, and that doesn't surprise me at all because one of the things that we've done is we put them out in service agreements. So like we put robot lawnmowers at people's houses through service agreements. We service them, we do the blade changes, and then they have the robot. But what I find is every customer names it. So like one customer, for instance, calls theirs Casper because it just roams around in the night. Another guy named his Albert the Eighth. I mean, so it's actually crazy because these people will call for service, and this might be a little different than even the Roomba, but this is more like the IED robot. And people will, he'll be like, Joe, Albert the Eighth needs some blades, And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, they get, like, there's a relationship that's developed with this.
When we first put the Roomba out and we were doing customer support ourselves, we would get calls saying, can you replace this robot? It's like, no, we'll send you a new one. Don't worry about it. Just send it back. And they're like, no, I need it replaced. This is my robot. No, I mean, I'm sorry, I need it fixed. They expected us to send an ambulance and, give it a little CPR or something. Yeah. And they wanted that one. So I think it is true for the home robots as well.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It really speaks to, I mean, they satisfy a need, which is, cleaning the house or cutting the grass. But yeah, I think it's that constant, it's always there. Yep. And as humans, like you said, it's kind of like having a pet. It's always
and anthropomorphizing them. The number of times people have told me my Roomba moved its virtual wall so it could escape, or my Roomba moved the plant in front of the virtual wall so it could escape. And I can assure them that it didn't do that. But no, that insist that it thought about it and planned it. It's
yeah. Well, I haven't had anybody tell me that yet, but for the robots, so maybe they think that the Roomba has a little more AI, So basically from a young age, obviously we know what got you into robots, but what kind of values were kind of instilled in you growing up? I know you guys moved here from London, but just kind of go into that, like the move and coming here, and just things you're passionate about, and what made you want to get automation out into this type of industry.
So I moved here when I was 5. At the same time I saw Star Wars, I had a TOS-80, one of the first home computers. My dad had bought it for the family, and he went with me and took classes at Radio Shacks, and I was amazed at how little the adults, because I was 11, right, and I could do it and they couldn't. I was amazed at what you could accomplish with computer program, how powerful it was. And even though it wasn't crystallized in my mind, we had a tape deck that you could control, so I could see it could do mechanical things as well. And that's eventually I went to MIT to try to learn how to build robots. And I discovered, although I learned a lot of amazing things at MIT about engineering, they didn't really know how to build robots for the real world.
Yeah.
So right out of MIT, I co-founded iRobot with 2 business partners, Rod Brooks and Colin Angle. And we did a lot of robots, a lot of different kinds of robots. You mentioned some of them in the pyramids, test flights for Mars landers, robots for law enforcement. We did robots for downhole oil, a toy with Hasbro, so many different robots. But the ones that people know today and what iRobot concentrates on today is the Roomba vacuuming robot. And they sold off the defense work, which went to FLIR, and then now it's Teradyne.
Really? So what was some of your favorite projects then you worked on? I mean, what is it, the iRobot just because it's the one that solved the need, or like what? Because there's a certain amount.
I think the one that I'm most proud of is the PackBots, and even the pork at my at the drone company, because they've been credited with saving the lives of hundreds of U.S. servicemen and thousands of civilians. And so when I think back of what I'm proudest of, having those people be able to come home because they had a robot on the mission.
So
was great.
Are you at liberty to explain how those work, or is there certain things you can't talk about that? Because I'm trying to figure out, are these like true robots, or are they like remote control units that people are running? And then how are what type of design goes into these? Look,
I've got a really expensive notion of what a robot is. It doesn't have to be fully autonomous or anything like that. The remote control is fine. It really just depends on the mission, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Roomba's autonomous for the vacuuming mission, but you wouldn't want to put it in a cave in Afghanistan and hope it can get around, right?
Yeah.
Or even in the garden, like we do with Turtle.
Yeah.
So I usually like to say autonomous for a particular mission. But yeah, the ones that we deployed in the in the 2000s were mostly teleoperated, some protected teleoperation. Some behaviors on them, but for the most part, the soldiers needed control of them because they weren't ready to do the entire missions autonomously then. Now the story's changed, and my last position was actually a civilian, but a general level position in the Pentagon. And now I can tell you, with the dollars and the deep thought going into robotics for the military, there's so much going on in autonomy.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just I said it a little bit when we kind of made our introductions earlier, but when I got into robotics, I never, I got into it basically for my industry to cut grass and do things that I had trouble doing in labor. And I never thought, fast forward 5 years later, I'd be sitting talking to someone on a Zoom call that had access, was working in the Pentagon. And it's amazing. Like the doors that have been opened getting into this automation world has just been amazing for me. And I just want to tell you, like, I'm totally like enamored, like talking to you about, like, this is like crazy.
Thank you.
So, okay. So we've all had a first job, right? So, I mean, you didn't just start developing robots, and just start doing that. So like, what was the first job that you had? Like, tell me a little bit about your starts in a professional career, like, or just in any type of work that you did.
Any kind of work. Okay, I'm going to skip the deli. But I worked at JPL when I was at MIT as an intern, and it was a wonderful, amazing place to work because of the work that was going on in satellite robotics and just the beginnings of the MOAS programs at the time.
But see, let's not skip the deli, because I like to talk about stuff like that with the deli, because here's why. Because I think there's so many people, and this is one of the reasons I do this podcast, is to inspire people to realize that, we all might have a dream, but we all have to, there's stepping stones to get to that dream. Okay. So like, to me, I look back, like I used to work at Best Buy, and I tell people to this day, it's one of the favorite jobs I ever had.
Were you on the Geek Squad, or were you?
I wasn't. I was actually, so I did car stereo, mobile car stereo installation, and I installed car alarms, and that's back when an SPST relay was this big, or an SPDT relay, and you had these big relay packs that you had to like Velcro them together, stuff them up in a dash, take a Cadillac and figure out what the resistance on the key was, and say, okay, that system has this resistance, and you'd wire a resistor into the relay. So, when I look at it now that I'm in robotics and I'm fixing the things that someone like you invents and makes, I look back on my career at Best Buy, which is what got me into small circuitry and analysis. And that was a stepping stone that got me to the point where I am right now, living like my dream life, So how long did you work at the deli? And what were you thinking when you were in that deli making those sandwiches?
How can I get out of here?
and how long did that happen?
And that made me apply to the internships going through MIT so we could have a summer job. That
so it was a stepping stone.
A stepping stone.